It was snowing that Christmas morning. The kind of soft, quiet snow that wraps the world in white and makes you believe, just for a moment, that everything can be made clean again. I stood by the window in my bathrobe, watching the flakes fall like feathers, sipping tea that had gone cold in my hands. 40 years. 40 Christmases beside the same man. And that morning, he handed me a small velvet box with a bow so perfectly tied, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd finally remembered. If you love honest stories, stay with me and subscribe. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from, which city or state. I'd love to know. I sat down on the couch, the same one we'd picked out together when the house was new and our daughter was still in diapers. Robert stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the stockings hanging there. Mine had my name stitched crookedly by our granddaughter. His looked pristine, like he'd never believed he deserved one. I opened the box slowly, my hands trembling. No sparkle. No ring. Just a folded piece of paper. White. Crisp. At the top in that cold, clean font he used for tax forms. Divorce agreement, final draft. My breath caught like a fishbone in my throat. I looked up at him. Is this a joke? He didn't smile. Didn't flinch. Just said, I've been seeing someone. For 2 years. 2 years. 730 mornings I'd made his coffee exactly how he liked it. 730 nights I'd pretended not to notice he no longer kissed my forehead before bed. And all that time, he was building a new life somewhere I couldn't see. I didn't cry right then. My body went numb, like I'd stepped into a freezer and forgotten how to get out. I folded the paper back neatly, placed it in the box, set it on the coffee table like it was something fragile. Then I stood, walked into the kitchen, turned on the oven, and started making cinnamon rolls. The recipe my mother taught me. The one I'd made every Christmas since I was 22. Because what else do you do when your world cracks open on the holiest morning of the year? You keep baking. You keep breathing. You pretend the tears dripping into the dough are just from the steam. Later that day my daughter called. Merry Christmas, Mama. Her voice was so bright, so full of joy. Liam made a reindeer out of pipe cleaners. He says it's magic and it'll fly you to Hawaii. I laughed. I really did. And in that laugh, something shifted inside me. Not breaking, but bending. Like a branch under snow that hasn't snapped yet, but knows it might have to. I didn't tell her. Not that day. Not for weeks. How could I ruin her Christmas with mine? So I smiled into the phone, praised the pipe cleaner reindeer. Hung up with a heart so heavy I thought it might drag me through the floor. That night, after the house was dark and silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of cheap red wine and that divorce paper. I read it 3 times. Every clause. Every legal phrase that reduced 40 years to a list of assets and irreconcilable differences. Then for the first time, I let myself cry. Not polite sniffles. Deep, guttural sobs that shook my ribs and left me gasping. I cried for the woman I was at 22, who said I do under a canopy of roses, thinking love was enough. I cried for the mother who stayed up nights worrying about braces and college funds while he watched football in the other room. I cried for the wife who stopped asking for help, because it was easier to do it alone than to keep feeling like a burden. But somewhere in that ocean of grief, a strange thing happened. A single thought surfaced, small but steady, like a light in a storm. I don't have to disappear anymore. It wasn't anger. Not yet. Just clarity. Because freedom doesn't always come wrapped in gold. Sometimes it arrives in a velvet box, tied with a bow of betrayal, delivered on the one day you thought you were safest. And maybe that's when it's most needed. I didn't know it then, but that Christmas morning wasn't the end of my story. It was the first real breath I'd taken in decades. The next morning, I woke up hoping it had been a nightmare. But the box was still on the coffee table. The paper still real. Robert had already left for work, or wherever he went these days. I made coffee for one. Just 1 cup. Sat at the table staring at the empty chair across from me. My phone buzzed. A text from my friend Carol. Coffee later? Need to catch up. I almost said no. Almost said I was busy, tired, not feeling well. But something in me, that small, steady light, said yes instead. We met at the cafe downtown, the one with the big windows and mismatched chairs. Carol took one look at my face and knew. What happened? I told her everything. The box. The paper. The 2 years. She didn't gasp or cry or tell me I was better off. She just reached across the table, took my hand and said, "Eleanor, you've been disappearing for years. Maybe this is your chance to come back." Her words hit me harder than Robert's had. Because she was right. I'd been fading. Slowly. Quietly. Making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. And I hadn't even noticed. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I went to the library. Not to pick up books for Liam or research recipes. For me. I wandered the aisles, running my fingers along spines, and stopped at the poetry section. Pulled out a collection by Mary Oliver. I sat in a corner chair and opened it to a random page. The poem was called Wild Geese. The first lines made my hands shake. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. I read it 3 times. Then I checked out the book. When I got home, Robert was in the garage, packing boxes. He didn't look up when I walked past. "I'm moving my things out," he said. "Give you space." "Good," I said. And I meant it. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my new book and a notebook I'd bought on impulse. I started writing. Not about Robert. Not about the divorce. Just small things. Today I remembered I love poetry. Today I walked alone and didn't feel lonely. Today I thought about who I used to be before I became someone's wife. The next few weeks blurred together. Robert moved out. I signed papers. Hired a lawyer Carol recommended. A sharp woman named Patricia who looked at the divorce agreement and said, "He's trying to screw you. We're going to fix that." My daughter came over when she found out. She cried. Hugged me tight. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "Neither did I said. And it was true. I'd been living in a fog so thick I couldn't see what was right in front of me. But now the fog was lifting. And what I saw scared me. An empty house. An uncertain future. A woman I barely recognized in the mirror. But I also saw something else. Possibility. One evening, about a month after Christmas, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Eleanor." A woman's voice. Familiar but distant. "Yes. It's Martha. From the library. From 1978. My heart stopped. Martha. The girl with copper hair and a laugh like music. The girl I'd met that summer before I got engaged. The girl I'd almost kissed under a willow tree. "Martha." I breathed. "How did you find me?" "Your daughter's Facebook. I saw a post about you and Robert separating. I had to call. I've thought about you every year, Eleanor. Every single year." We talked for over an hour. About books. About life. About how she'd moved to Portland, opened a bookstore, never married. "I kept waiting," she said quietly, "for someone to make me feel the way you did. But no one ever came close." When we hung up, I sat in the dark living room, my heart pounding. For the first time in 40 years, I let myself remember. Really remember. Not just Martha, but the woman I'd been that summer. The one who read poetry and dreamed big. The one who hadn't yet learned to make herself small. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to survive this divorce. I was going to live through it. Really live. I joined a writer's group at the cafe. Showed up with my notebook and my Mary Oliver book, terrified. But the people there, they didn't judge. They listened. They nodded. They understood. When it was my turn to share, I read 3 lines I'd written the night before. At 64, I learned my name isn't wife or mother. It's Eleanor. And she's still here. A woman across from me wiped her eyes. "Welcome back, Eleanor," she said. And in that moment I knew. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of something I'd been waiting for my whole life. But just as I was starting to find my footing, something happened that would change everything again. Robert called 3 weeks later. Not to apologize. Not to beg me back. Just to tell me he'd be by to pick up the rest of his things. I said fine. Hung up. Went back to the poem I was writing about winter thaw. When he showed up, he looked different. Older. Tired. He stood in the doorway like a guest, not someone who'd lived there for 40 years. You look good, he said quietly. I feel good, I replied. And I did. He loaded boxes into his truck while I made tea. When he came back in for the last load, he paused. Eleanor, I never meant to hurt you. I looked at him. Really looked. Saw the man I'd loved at 22. Saw the stranger he'd become. You didn't mean not to either, I said. That's the problem. He nodded. Left. And I stood at the window watching his truck disappear, feeling nothing. Not anger. Not grief. Just quiet acceptance. The writers' group became my anchor. Every Thursday night I showed up. Shared my words. Listened to others share theirs. There was David, who wrote about his late wife's garden. Carol, who wrote about rebuilding after her own divorce. And Margaret, 87, who wrote about adventures she'd had traveling solo across Europe. You're never too old to start over, Margaret told me one night. I left my husband at 65. Best decision I ever made. I started writing more. Not just poems. Stories. Memories. Things I'd buried for decades. About my mother. About my childhood. About dreams I'd had before I learned to stop dreaming. One afternoon, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a worn copy of Sylvia Plath's Ariel, and a note. You lent me this in 1978. I've carried it everywhere since. Thank you for the poetry. Thank you for the summer. Martha. My hands shook holding that book. I remembered lending it to her. Remembered sitting by the river while she read aloud. Remembered the way she looked at me when she finished, like I was something precious. I called her that night. You kept it all these years? Like a talisman, she said. Reminder of a life I almost lived. We talked for hours. About regrets. About roads not taken. About how we'd both chosen safety over truth. I married Robert because it was expected. I admitted. Because I was scared. I know, she said gently. But you're not scared anymore, are you? No, I said. Not anymore. She asked if she could visit. Said she'd be driving through on her way to see her sister in Chicago. Said she'd love to see me, just for coffee, just to sit in the same room. I said yes before I could overthink it. She arrived on a Tuesday. I'd cleaned the house, changed my clothes 3 times, felt like a nervous teenager. When I opened the door, she stood there, silver hair in a braid, green eyes exactly as I remembered. Eleanor, she breathed. We hugged. Long tight. Like we were trying to make up for 40 years in a single embrace. We sat in my living room drinking tea, talking like no time had passed. She told me about her bookstore, about the life she'd built. I told her about the divorce, about finding myself again through writing. You were always a writer, she said. Even when you were shelving books, you'd talk about stories like they were alive. I forgot, I said. I forgot so many things. She reached across the coffee table and took my hand. You're remembering now. That's what matters. She stayed 3 days. We walked by the river. Visited the old library. Sat under the willow tree where she'd kissed me 40 years ago. This time, I kissed her back. It wasn't dramatic. Wasn't earth-shattering. Just 2 women older and wiser, finally being honest. I'm not asking you to leave your life, she said on her last morning. I'm just asking if there's room in it for me. As a friend. As whatever you need. Yes, I said. Yes, there's room. After she left, I felt different. Not healed. Healing isn't that fast, but hopeful. Like maybe the life I was building could include joy, not just survival. My daughter came over that weekend with Liam. We made cookies. He told me about school, about his friends, about a girl he liked. Grandma, he said suddenly. Are you sad about Grandpa leaving? I thought about it. Really thought. No, sweetheart. I'm not sad. I'm free. He tilted his head. Like a bird. Exactly like a bird. That night, after they left, I got an email. From a literary journal. They wanted to publish my poem. The one about learning my name. Not for money. Just for voice. Just for truth. I read the email 3 times. Then I called Martha. They want to publish me. She laughed. Of course they do. You're brilliant. I celebrated by buying myself a new notebook. Deep blue with gold edges. On the first page I wrote, The woman who remembered her name. But just as things were settling, just as I was finding my rhythm, I got another call. This one from Patricia, my lawyer. Eleanor, we need to talk. Robert's trying to hide assets. This could get ugly. And just like that, I realized the hard part wasn't over. It was just beginning. Patricia laid it out over coffee at her office. Bank accounts I didn't know about. Transfers made months before Christmas. Money moved quietly, carefully, into his name only. He's been planning this a long time, she said, jaw tight. This wasn't sudden. This was calculated. I should have been shocked. Wasn't. The man who gave me divorce papers on Christmas was capable of anything. What do we do? I asked. We fight, she said. We make him regret underestimating you. Over the next few months, I learned things about my marriage I'd never known. Robert had opened credit cards without telling me, made investments that failed, borrowed against our retirement, all while I was grocery shopping and making dinner and believing we were fine. He kept you in the dark, Patricia said. On purpose. It made sense now. Why he always handled the finances. Why he got angry when I asked questions. Why he made me feel stupid for not understanding. But I wasn't stupid. I was trusting. And he'd use that against me. The divorce dragged on. Meetings with lawyers. Mountains of paperwork. Negotiations that went nowhere. Robert wanted quick and easy. I wanted fair. Through it all, I kept writing. Kept going to the writers' group. Kept talking to Martha, who called every Sunday like clockwork. You're stronger than you think, she'd say. I magzausta. I therapy. Strength and exhaustion aren't opposites. Sometimes they're the same thing. One night, Carol from the writers' group invited me to dinner. Just us, she said. No husbands, no kids. Just women eating pasta and telling the truth. There were 6 of us. All different ages. All different stories. But the same thread running through. We'd all made ourselves smaller for men who didn't deserve it. I stayed 20 years too long, one woman said. I ignored every red flag, said another. I thought love meant sacrifice, said a third. When it was my turn, I said, I forgot I had a choice. Carol raised her glass. To remembering we have choices. We toasted, ate, laughed. And for the first time since Christmas, I felt like I belonged somewhere. But the next day, I found something that shattered my fragile peace. A box in the attic. Old letters. From Robert. To someone named Linda. Dated back 5 years. 5 years. Not 2. 5. I sat on the dusty attic floor, reading them one by one. Love letters. Promises. Plans for a future that didn't include me. And the worst part? They weren't just romantic. They were financial. Linda writing about her debts. About needing help. About Robert promising to take care of her. He hadn't just fallen in love. He'd been used. And in trying to save her, he'd destroyed me. I should have felt vindicated. Should have felt superior. But I just felt sad. Sad for him. Sad for me. Sad for the waste of it all. I brought the letters to Patricia. This changes everything, she said, eyes sharp. And it did. Suddenly we had leverage. Proof of financial misconduct. Proof of deception. The divorce that had been dragging suddenly moved fast. Robert's lawyer called. Offered a settlement. Better than before, but still not fair. Patricia looked at me. Your call. I thought about it. Thought about fighting for every penny. About making him pay. Then I thought about the woman I was becoming. The one who wrote poetry. Who had real friends. Who was learning to live without anger. Accept it, I said. I want this over. Patricia frowned. You could get more. I know. But I'd rather have peace. We signed papers on a cold day in March. 4 months after Christmas. I walked out of that office a divorced woman. Single for the first time since I was 22. Carol was waiting in the parking lot. How do you feel? I thought about it. Free, I said. And meant it. But freedom, I was learning, isn't a destination. It's a practice. Something you choose every day. And my next choice was about to change everything. Spring came slowly that year. Snow melted into mud. Brown grass turned green. Trees budded. And I planted a garden for the first time in 20 years. Robert had never cared about gardening, said it was too much work. So I'd stopped trying. But now, on my knees in the dirt, planting tomatoes and peppers and herbs, I felt something I'd forgotten. Joy. Simple, uncomplicated joy. Liam came over after school one day, saw me covered in dirt, grinning like a fool. "Grandma, you look happy." "I am, baby. I really am." He helped me plant marigolds along the fence, asked questions about butterflies and bees. Then, out of nowhere, said, "I'm glad you're not sad anymore." I hugged him. Me too. Martha called that night. We'd been talking regularly, but this time felt different. "I've been thinking," she said carefully. "My lease is up in July, and I'm tired of Portland. Too rainy. Too crowded." "Where will you go?" I asked, heart suddenly pounding. "I was hoping, maybe closer to you. There's a little cottage for rent near the river. The one we used to walk by." I didn't answer right away. This was real. This was her asking to be part of my life. Not just phone calls and occasional visits. Real, everyday life. "Yes," I said. "Yes, come." She moved in July. I helped her unpack. Watched her fill the cottage with books and plants and that same wild energy I'd loved 40 years ago. We fell into a rhythm. Morning walks by the river. Coffee at the cafe. Evenings reading on her porch. My daughter noticed. "Mom, are you and Martha?" I didn't know how to answer. We hadn't labeled it. Hadn't defined it. We were just two women learning to be honest for the first time in our lives. "We're friends," I said. "Close friends." She nodded. Didn't push. But I saw understanding in her eyes. The writers' group started meeting at Martha's cottage. She'd make tea and cookies, and we'd sit in her sunny living room sharing our words. One night, Margaret looked at Martha and me sitting side by side and smiled. "You two remind me of my sister and her partner. They found each other at 70. Said it was worth the wait." Martha and I glanced at each other. Didn't say anything. But something shifted. That night, after everyone left, Martha asked, "Do you ever think about what we could have been? If we'd been braver back then?" "All the time," I admitted. "Me too." She reached for my hand. "But maybe timing matters less than we think. Maybe finding each other now, when we finally know who we are, is better." I squeezed her hand. "Maybe." We sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies blink in the garden. And I realized something. I'd spent 40 years in a marriage where silence felt heavy, suffocating. But this silence felt different. Peaceful. Safe. August brought a heat wave. Martha and I drove to the lake, swam in water so cold it made us gasp and laugh. Sat on the dock afterward, letting the sun dry our skin. "I've never felt this free," she said suddenly. "Neither have I." She looked at me then. Really looked. "Eleanor, I'm in love with you. I have been since 1978. And I know that's complicated. I know your life is already full of change. But I needed to say it. Just once." My heart hammered. Not with fear. With recognition. Because I'd known. Deep down I'd always known. "I love you too," I said. "I think I always have." We didn't kiss dramatically. Didn't make grand declarations. Just held hands and watched the sun set over the water. Two women, finally brave enough to choose truth over safety. My daughter's reaction surprised me. When I told her about Martha, about us, she just hugged me. "Mom, I just want you happy. However that looks." Liam was even simpler. "Is Miss Martha your girlfriend now?" "Yes, I think she is." "Cool. She makes really good cookies." The writers' group celebrated with champagne and badly frosted cupcakes. To Eleanor, Carol toasted. For teaching us it's never too late to be brave. But not everyone was supportive. Robert heard through mutual friends. Called me angry. "You're with a woman? After 40 years of marriage?" "Yes," I said calmly. "This is why you wanted the divorce, isn't it? You were lying the whole time." "No, Robert. I wasn't lying. I was surviving. There's a difference." He hung up. I blocked his number. Some people in town whispered. I'd see them at the grocery store, their eyes sliding away. But I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I was living for me. Not for what people thought. Not for what was expected. For me. Martha and I started talking about the future. Maybe buying a house together. Somewhere with a big garden and room for Liam to visit. Somewhere that felt like ours. One Saturday we drove 2 hours to look at a house by the coast. It was perfect. Blue shutters. White porch. Garden shed. View of the lighthouse. I can see us here, Martha said, eyes shining. Me too, I said. And I could. Mornings writing on the porch. Evenings cooking together. A life built on honesty and choice and love. We made an offer. It was accepted. But then, just as everything was falling into place, I got a letter. From Robert. And what he wrote inside made me question everything I thought I knew about our marriage. The letter was handwritten. No typed legal words this time. Just Robert's careful script on plain white paper. I almost threw it away. Almost burned it. But something made me read it. Eleanor, I don't expect you to respond. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know the truth. All of it. I didn't leave you for Linda, because I stopped loving you. I left because I never learned how to love you well. You were always stronger, the one who remembered everything, who held us together, and instead of growing, I shrank. I became a ghost in our marriage. Linda was kind. She laughed easily, but she wasn't you. She never could be. I didn't choose her over you. I chose escape over the hard work of being a real partner. The worst part? I think you knew all along. You just loved me too much to call me out. I'm not asking to come back. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know. You were never the problem. I was. Robert. I read it 3 times. My hands didn't shake. My chest ached, but not with betrayal. With a strange, sad understanding. I showed it to Martha that night. She read it silently, then looked at me. How do you feel? Sad, I said honestly. For him. For me. For all the years we spent hurting each other without meaning to. Do you want to see him? I thought about it. No. But I want to write back. Just once. To close the door properly. So I did. I wrote, Robert, thank you for the honesty. I wish we'd had it 40 years ago. But I understand why we didn't. We were both scared. Both trying to be what we thought we should be instead of who we were. I don't forgive you yet. But I believe you. And I hope you find peace. I have. Eleanor. I mailed it the next day. Felt the weight lift. Martha and I moved into the coastal house in October. Spent weeks unpacking, painting, making it ours. Liam came for weekends, ran wild on the beach. Helped Martha plant bulbs that would bloom in spring. My daughter visited with her husband. Stood on the porch looking at the lighthouse. Mom, this place feels like you. It does, doesn't it? I said, arm around Martha's waist. That first Christmas in the new house, we had everyone over. My daughter's family. Carol and Margaret from the writers group. Martha's sister. We cooked together, laughed, played games with Liam. As I watched them all, these people I loved, this life I'd built, I thought about that Christmas morning a year ago. The velvet box. The divorce papers. The end of everything I'd known. And I realized, it hadn't been an ending at all. It had been permission. Permission to stop pretending. To stop making myself small. To finally, at 65, become who I'd always been underneath. Martha came up beside me. What are you thinking? That I'm grateful, I said. For all of it. Even the hard parts. She kissed my temple. Me too. But life, even in its peace, still had lessons to teach. And the next one would test everything I'd learned about love, loss, and letting go. The first year in the coastal house was magic. Martha and I woke to the sound of waves. Spent mornings writing, me at the kitchen table, her in the sunroom surrounded by books. Afternoons we walked the beach, collecting sea glass and driftwood. I'd started a blog. Nothing fancy. Just stories about rebuilding after divorce. About finding yourself at 65. About love that comes when you've stopped looking. People found it. Started commenting. Sharing their own stories. You're helping people, Martha said one morning, reading over my shoulder. I'm just telling the truth, I replied. That's what helps. My readership grew. 100 followers. Then 1,000. Then 10,000. Women my age. Younger women. Even men. All saying the same thing. Thank you for being brave enough to share this. One day, I got an email from a literary agent. She'd found my blog. Wanted to know if I'd ever considered writing a book. Your voice matters, she wrote. People need to hear it. I called Martha, hands shaking. Someone wants me to write a book. Of course they do. You're brilliant. I met with the agent via video call. She was young, sharp, passionate. I see this as a memoir, she said. Your journey from that Christmas morning to now. The divorce. Martha. Rebuilding. All of it. That's my whole life, I said. Exactly. And people will see themselves in it. I signed with her that spring. Spent the summer writing. Not just blog posts. A real book. With chapters and structure and depth. Martha read every word. Offering gentle notes and endless encouragement. Liam came for 2 weeks in July. Now 10 years old, all gangly limbs and big questions. One afternoon, building sandcastles, he asked, Grandma, do you miss Grandpa? I thought about it. I miss who I thought he was. But no, I don't miss the reality. Do you think he misses you? Maybe. But that's not my problem anymore. He nodded, processing. I like it better now. You smile more. Out of the mouths of children. The book sold to a small press. Nothing huge. No big advance. But they believed in it. Believed in me. Publication date set for the following spring. They even wanted me to do readings. Bookstores. Libraries. People will want to meet you, my editor said. The idea terrified me. But Martha just laughed. Eleanor, you've rebuilt your entire life. You can handle a few bookstore readings. Fall came. The lighthouse looked stunning against autumn skies. Martha and I hosted Thanksgiving. My daughter. Her family. Carol and Margaret. Martha's sister and her wife. The house overflowed with love and laughter and pies. After everyone left, Martha and I sat on the porch wrapped in blankets watching stars. I've been thinking, she said carefully. My heart skipped. Her tone was serious. About what? About making this official. Not marriage, I know that's complicated for you. But something. A commitment ceremony. Just us and the people we love. Saying out loud what we both already know. Tears pricked my eyes. You want that. I want you to know I'm here. Not because it's easy or convenient, but because I choose you. Every day. Yes, I said, voice breaking. Yes, let's do it. We planned it for the following spring. Small. Intimate. On the beach at sunset. Carol agreed to officiate. Liam would hold the rings. My daughter would read a poem. Winter was quiet. Peaceful. I finished final edits on the book. Watched advance copies arrive in the mail. Held one in my hands and cried. You did it, Martha said, hugging me. We did it, I corrected. Liam came for winter break. We made gingerbread houses, watched old movies, taught him to make Martha's famous hot chocolate. One night he looked at us seriously. You know what I'm gonna tell my kids someday? What? I asked. That my grandma was the bravest person I ever knew. That she started over when she was old. Hey now, I interrupted, laughing. And she taught me you're never stuck. You can always choose different. I pulled him into a hug, overwhelmed. The book launched in March. Reviews came in. Some loved it. Some didn't. But the ones that mattered, the messages from readers, were beautiful. Women writing to say, you gave me courage to leave. You showed me it's not too late. Thank you for being honest. My first reading was at a small bookstore 2 hours away. I was terrified. Voice shaking. Hands trembling. But as I read the chapter about that Christmas morning, about opening the velvet box, I looked up and saw 50 people listening. Really listening. Some crying. Some nodding. All connected. After they lined up. Asked me to sign books. Told me their stories. Hugged me. Thanked me. You're a natural, the bookstore owner said. I'm terrified, I admitted. Same thing, she laughed. The commitment ceremony was perfect. 20 people on the beach at sunset. I wore a simple blue dress. Martha wore white linen. We stood barefoot in the sand while Carol spoke about love and courage and choosing each other. When it was time for vows, I took Martha's hands. I spent 40 years living half a life. You taught me what it means to be whole. To be seen. To be brave. I choose you. Today and every day after. Martha's vows were simpler. I waited 40 years to say this out loud. I love you, Eleanor. I always have. I always will. We exchanged rings, kissed while everyone cheered, walked back down the beach hand in hand as the sun set over the ocean. It was the best day of my life. But life, even beautiful life, holds sorrow. And that sorrow came for us sooner than I expected. That summer, Martha started forgetting things. Small at first. Where she put her keys. What day it was. Then bigger. The name of a book she'd read 100 times. The way home from the grocery store. I noticed. Pretended not to. Made excuses. But when she forgot Liam's name during his visit, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The diagnosis came in September. Early onset Alzheimer's. Continue. 2014. Aggressive. No cure. Just time. However much we had left. Martha took it better than I did. At least I got to be yours first, she said, holding me while I sobbed. We made plans. Legal documents. Medical directives. Decided she'd stay home as long as possible. I'd care for her. Carol and Margaret would help. The decline was slow at first. Then faster. By winter she struggled with words. By spring she didn't always know where she was. But she knew me. Always knew me. I'd read to her. Our favorite poems. Stories from our life. Your name is Martha, I'd say gently. You have silver hair and green eyes. You once kissed me under a willow tree and changed my whole life. Sometimes she'd squeeze my hand. Sometimes just smile. She passed on a soft April morning. Daisies blooming outside the window. I held her hand. Told her she was loved. Told her she was free. We buried her under the daisies by the lighthouse. Carol read Mary Oliver. Liam, now 13, placed a worn copy of Ariel on her grave. I thought losing her would break me. And it did. But not completely. Because she taught me something Robert never had. That love isn't about possession. It's about witnessing. About seeing someone fully and choosing them anyway. And I'd gotten to witness Martha. Really witness her. For 4 beautiful years. That was enough. The months after Martha's death were the hardest of my life. Harder even than the divorce. Because this grief wasn't tinged with anger or relief. Just pure aching loss. I stayed in the coastal house. Couldn't imagine leaving the place we'd built together. Kept her books on the shelves. Her coffee mug on the counter. Her garden thriving because I tended it like she'd taught me. Carol came by twice a week. Brought groceries. Sat with me in silence. You don't have to be okay, she'd say. Good. Because I'm not. Liam visited often. Now in high school, tall and thoughtful. He'd help me in the garden, ask questions about Martha, listen to stories. Tell me about when you met her, he'd say. And I would. Every time. Because keeping her alive in stories felt important. My daughter worried. Mom, you're all alone out here. Maybe you should move closer. I'm not alone, I said. Martha's everywhere. And I like it here. The book did well. Better than expected. A second printing. Invitations to speak. But I'd stopped doing events after Martha got sick. Now 6 months after her death, my agent called. There's a conference in Portland. Women's Memoir. They want you as a keynote. Eleanor, I know it's hard. But people need to hear from you. I almost said no. But then I thought, Martha would want me to go. She'd tell me to share the story. To help people. So I went. Standing in front of 300 women, I talked about that Christmas morning 7 years ago. About the velvet box. The divorce papers. The journey that followed. And then I talked about Martha. About finding love when I'd stopped looking. About losing it too soon. Grief, I said, voice steady, doesn't erase love. Proves it. The depth of pain measures the depth of connection. And if I could go back, knowing how it would end, I'd choose her again. Every time. The applause was deafening. Afterward, women lined up. Not just to buy books. To share their stories. To say thank you. To cry with me. One woman about my age took my hands. I'm leaving my husband next month. Your book gave me courage. But hearing you talk about grief, I needed that too. Because I'm scared. Of being alone. Of it being too late. I squeezed her hands. It's never too late. And alone isn't the worst thing. Living half a life is. That trip changed something in me. Reminded me that my story mattered. that sharing it helped people, that I could honor Martha by continuing to be brave. Back home I started writing again. Not a new book. Just journal entries. Letters to Martha. Processing grief through words the way I'd processed everything else. One afternoon, cleaning out the closet, I found a box labeled, "For Eleanor, open when I'm gone." Martha's handwriting. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. Each dated. Instructions on the outside of each. Open on your first birthday without me. Open when you're ready to laugh again. Open when you think you'll never be happy. I opened the first one. Eleanor, I'm not gone. I'm in every daisy, every poem, every sunset. Don't mourn me so long you forget to live. Love you forever. I sobbed, then laughed. Because of course she'd planned this. Of course she'd found a way to stay with me. Over the next year I opened letters when I needed them. Each one full of love, encouragement, reminders to keep going. Slowly life returned. Not the same, but alive. I started doing events again. Wrote essays. Helped my daughter through her own marriage struggles. Watched Liam graduate high school. One day, 2 years after Martha died, I woke up and realized something. I was okay. Not healed. Not done grieving. But okay. I called Carol. Want to go to the beach? Always, she said. We walked for hours. Talked about everything and nothing. And as we sat on the sand watching waves, she said, "You know what's beautiful? You didn't let loss destroy you. You let it shape you." Martha taught me that, I said. To meet grief with gratitude. That spring, on the anniversary of Martha's death, I hosted a gathering. Not a funeral. A celebration. Everyone who'd loved her came. We shared stories. Laughed. Cried. Planted a willow tree by her grave. She'd love this, Carol said. She would, I agreed. Life continued. My third book came out, about grief and healing and finding joy after loss. It sold better than the first two. I did a book tour. Met thousands of people. Heard thousands of stories. And through it all I felt Martha. In quiet moments. In unexpected grace. In the courage to keep choosing life even when it hurt. One evening, sitting on my porch watching the lighthouse, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Eleanor? This is Sarah Chun. I'm a producer with Netflix. We've been following your work. Your story. And we'd love to discuss adapting your books into a limited series. I nearly dropped the phone. You're serious? Very. Your story, the divorce, Martha, the grief, it's universal. And we think it could help millions of people. We talked for an hour. She explained the process. Said they wanted to honor the truth of it. Keep it real. Raw. Honest. I said I'd think about it. That night, I opened another letter from Martha. This one said, "Open when something big happens." Inside. "Whatever it is, say yes. I'll be cheering you on. Go be brave, my love." I called Sarah the next day. Yes. Let's do it. But saying yes to the series meant facing something I'd been avoiding. Talking about Martha publicly in a way I hadn't before. Really letting the world see our love. Our life. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that. The series took 2 years to make. Writers interviewed me for hours. Asked about every detail. The divorce. The Christmas morning. Meeting Martha. Loving her. Losing her. First it was excruciating. Reliving it all. But slowly something shifted. Telling the story out loud over and over, I realized how far I'd come. How much I'd survived. They cast a brilliant actress to play me. We met for coffee. She wanted to understand who I was. Not just the story but the person. "What did Martha teach you?" she asked. I thought for a long moment. That love isn't about possession. It's about presence. Being fully there for someone. Letting them be fully themselves. She wrote that down. That's beautiful. Filming took 6 months. They shot some scenes at my house. I watched them recreate our life. The beach walks, the morning coffee, the garden. Cried watching someone embody Martha. Not because it was wrong. Because it was right. The series premiered on a cold January night. 7 years after that Christmas morning. I watched it alone in my living room. Wrapped in one of Martha's quilts. It was honest. Raw. Beautiful. They didn't shy away from the hard parts. The divorce. The fear. The grief. But they also captured the joy, the love, the freedom. When it ended, I sat in silence for a long time. Then I opened my laptop. Messages flooded in. Thousands of them. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm leaving my marriage tomorrow because of you. I came out to my family after watching this. You showed me it's never too late. I read them all. Every single one. And I realized this was why I'd said yes. Not for fame or money, but for this. For connection. For helping people feel less alone. The series was nominated for awards. Won some. I did interviews. Late night shows. Podcasts. Everyone wanted to know, how did you do it? How did you start over at 65? My answer was always the same. I didn't have a choice. It was start over or disappear. And I've been disappearing for 40 years. I was tired. Liam came to one of the premieres. Now in college studying social work. Grandma, you're famous, he teased. I'm just honest, I replied. Same thing, he said. And maybe he was right. My daughter came too. Brought her new partner. A kind woman named Angela. Mom, I need to tell you something. She said nervously. What? Angela and we're together. And I know it's sudden and maybe you'll think. I stopped her. Honey, I think you're brave. And I'm proud of you. She cried. Hugged me. You showed me it's okay. To choose yourself. To be honest. That moment meant more than any award. Life settled into a new rhythm. I still lived in the coastal house. Still tended Martha's garden. Still walked the beach every morning. But I also traveled. Spoke at events. Mentored other writers. Helped women going through divorce. Became accidentally a voice for starting over. On the 5th anniversary of Martha's death, I opened the last letter. The one marked, open when you're ready to love again. Inside, Eleanor, if you're reading this, years have passed. And I hope you've healed. I hope you've laughed. I hope you've lived. And if someone new comes along, someone kind, someone who sees you, don't say no because of me. I want you happy. I want you loved. I want you to have it all. You deserve it. Forever yours, M. I cried reading it. Not sad tears. Grateful ones. I wasn't looking for love. Didn't need it. But I was open. Open to possibility. To connection. To whatever came next. A few months later at a writers' conference I met someone. A woman named Diana. She taught poetry at a university. We talked for hours about Mary Oliver and Adrienne Rich. Exchanged numbers. Started emailing. It wasn't Martha. Would never be Martha. But it was something. A spark. Possibility. We took it slow. Coffee dates. Long walks. Learning each other. She'd lost her wife 5 years ago. Understood grief. Understood what it meant to love someone and lose them and somehow keep going. I'm not trying to replace her, Diana said one evening. I know, I replied. And I'm not trying to replace mine. Good, she smiled. Then we can just be us. It was enough. Liam graduated college. Got a job helping homeless youth. You inspired me, he said. Watching you help people. I want to do that too. I cried. You'll be amazing. I learned from the best, he said. And hugged me tight. My daughter got married. Small ceremony on the beach. I walked her down the aisle. Stood beside her as she promised to love Angela fully, honestly, bravely. Thank you, she whispered after. For showing me what real love looks like. Now at 73, I sit on my porch watching another sunset. Diana's inside making tea. The garden is blooming. Daisies and lavender and Martha's roses. Liam's visiting next week. My daughter just called with news she's pregnant. I'm going to be a grandmother again. Life is full. Messy. Beautiful. Nothing like I planned. Everything I needed. That Christmas morning 8 years ago, when Robert handed me that velvet box, I thought my life was ending. Thought I was too old to start over. Too broken to heal. Too late for happiness. I was wrong. It wasn't an ending. It was permission. Permission to stop pretending. To stop being small. To finally, at 65, become who I'd always been underneath. The divorce didn't destroy me. It freed me. Martha didn't complete me. She helped me remember I was already whole. And grief didn't break me. It taught me what matters. Presence, honesty, love without conditions. So if you're listening to this, if you're sitting in your own darkness wondering if you'll survive, hear me. You will. Not just survive. You'll thrive. You'll discover parts of yourself you forgot existed. You'll build a life so full of truth and love and purpose you'll wonder how you ever lived any other way. It won't be easy. It won't be quick. But it will be worth it. Because you deserve more than half a life. You deserve all of it. If this story touched you, if it made you feel less alone, do me a kindness. Hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. And subscribe so you never miss a story of ordinary women doing extraordinary things, like choosing themselves one brave decision at a time. Leave a comment. Tell me where you're from. Tell me your story. I'll read everyone. Because your voice matters. Your journey matters. You matter. Thank you for walking this path with me. For listening. For believing that it's never too late to start over. Now go. Be brave. Choose yourself. Your second chapter is waiting. And it's going to be beautiful.